back with another super special guest. Today's guest is a professional fighter out of Massachusetts. He recently made his karate combat debut back in October. He is also the former lightweight and welterweight champion for Cage Titans FC out of Massachusetts. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Skeletor Giannetti. Joe Giannetti, first off, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it might be a little hard to see for the people, but we got Skeletor in the background there. That is your nickname. Where does that originate from?
So when I first started fighting as an amateur, we weren't sure if I would be a 55er or a 45er. So my first amateur fight, I fought at 155, and then we were kind of working our way down. So the second one was at 150, and I'll never make 45. Those extra 5 pounds were terrible. But we got to the venue, and it was a promotion that I only fought for once, didn't really know anybody. And the announcer came over and was like, "Hey kid, what's your nickname?" And at the time, my coach picked all of our nicknames, and it always changed until one stuck. And so I was like, I don't know, you got to go ask my coach. So he ran off, found my coach. Nobody told me anything. I get in the cage. But prior to this, all week, I was so skinny from cutting to 150. All my friends were picking on me. They were like, dude, you're so skinny. Like, you look like Skeletor. Your face is sucked out. So now I'm in the cage pacing back and forth. They're calling our names, and they get to me, and they call me Joe Skeletor Giannetti. And I kind of like look over in my corner, and I'm like, he must have talked to my friends. Like, he must have heard them. And after the fight, I win, and I run over to him, and I'm like, did you talk to my friends today? And he was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I explained it all to him, and he was like, all right, I guess that's it. It's sticking.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love it. I think it's great. But yeah, I want to go back in time a little bit. You were a finalist on The Ultimate Fighter 27. But aside from the fights, just that experience, the house itself, and then you're trained by arguably one of the greatest of all time, Daniel Cormier and Cain Velasquez also. Just take us through that experience.
Yeah, man, it was one of the best experiences of my life and of my career. Prior to Tough, I never really traveled much. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so traveling and flying weren't really a thing I was used to. And then my first time traveling as an adult, living on my own and stuff, I go to the Ultimate Fighter house and I'm surrounded by guys from all over the world, different backgrounds. That was really cool. And then, seeing different fight styles, and then of course meeting guys like Stipe, DC, Cain Velasquez, was awesome for a personal experience. As far as fighting, it's a fighter's dream. You live in a $5 million house. You don't have to go grocery shopping. You don't got to clean the house. You just got to do your laundry, do your dishes, and train. And that's what we did. We just trained, and me personally, I was probably the most boring guy on that season. They did a great job making me look interesting, but I was always tired. You train twice a day, sometimes three if you're hitting the treadmill in the house. And I would just eat, sleep, train, repeat, and that's the life I want to live. So that was perfect for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've talked to a couple guys before that were on it, like Dustin Pig and guys like that. Fight day, he said that it was kind of weird. He wakes up and the camera's right in your face. Was that similar experience for you?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the funniest things that happened, they told me the next day, I think it was before my last fight on the show. You'll see it sometimes they kind of get like that night before, like, how do you feel about the fight? Any jitters, da 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 da. Well, like I said, I was so tired from all the training and stuff, and I was walking around so light because I had to make weight a couple times while I was there. I was going to bed early. So I got home from training, I ate my dinner, I prepped for the next day, and then I went right to bed. And I guess the producers had come in and they wanted to ask me a few questions to record it, obviously for before the fight. And what they didn't know is once I'm asleep, that's it. Like I'm dead to the world. So I guess they came in and they were like sitting, I was on the top bunk. I guess they came in and they were like, Joe, Joe. And I guess they kind of like shook the bunk bed a little bit. I don't remember any of it. So the next day they're like, dude, we thought we were going to have to check your pulse. And I was like, oh yeah, when I'm asleep, it's game over. Like you have to catch me before I shut my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's crazy. And then you were only what, like 21, 22 at the time. Were
I
you
was
the youngest?
22.
Were you the youngest one in the house at that point?
Yeah, so I think the second youngest was Kyler Phillips. I think he's a couple
Mhm.
months older than me. But yeah, we were the two youngest.
Yeah, that's crazy. What an experience just in general to get that. And then, like we said, Ultimate Fighter, the finale doesn't go your way. What are your thoughts just like immediately afterwards?
Um, you know, in the moment, as soon as the fight ended, I knew I dropped the ball. I knew they were going to cut me. Friends, family, coaches, and teammates were all like, you're crazy. Like, think about what you did on the show. And I'm like, yeah, but unfortunately for me, it was like the biggest international fight week of all time. They had the doubleheader Friday, Saturday with DC Stipe the next day. and I dropped the ball. I didn't perform well. And it's funny because it's like a catch 22, right? Originally when I made a post after I lost that fight, and I've made a few posts since then. Even recently I made one about how like that day has like haunted me, and I try to give myself grace, and it's like you I never have, and you can't really make excuses for that loss. But then like you don't give reasons, and people like I've seen like, oh, that kid threw the fight, he put money on it, he didn't want to be there, like all this shit. And it's like I was so sick the morning of that fight, and that's not the reason the only reason I performed poorly. There were multiple reasons.
Right.
Um, but I was so sick the morning of the fight, and everybody that was with me in my hotel room, like, you could feel the aura of like, "Holy shit, we're gonna have to pull him out of the fight." And I was like, "No, I'm fine." Like, I was bullshitting everybody. I was like, "I'm fine. I'm great." Like, I couldn't breathe out of my nose. Like, I was dry heaving. Like, it was terrible.
Mm.
And one of the moms from my gym, she was out there with her family and the kids, and she's like, a holistic medicine woman, and she does like massage therapy and all that. So now she's like, "You got to get this, this, and this." So I'm texting my friends that came out to watch me fight. I'm like, "Yo, you need to go to the Walgreens and get all this stuff." So now I'm doing like the steam neti pot in my nose. She's like trying to hit like my chakra points to open up like my breathing. We were trying everything. And then, my now wife, but she was my girlfriend at the time, she's never experienced fighting to this level. So she's all just nervous. And I was like, "I got this. Don't sweat it. Like, I'm going to go out there and do my thing." And I felt horrible. Like, I felt like shit. And, I feel like I played it off really well for the first round, round and a half. And then, my body kind of just shit the bed on me. And I tell people all the time, looking back on that, the best way I can describe that fight is like if you're playing a fighting game and the controller dies on you, and your buddy doesn't let you swap the batteries, he just starts beating your ass. Like, that's how I felt. As I was like, I got in my head, I'm like, I got to do this and this, and then my body wouldn't move. And like, the infamous third round where like Trezano couldn't land on me, and then like he kept telling me to stand and bang. So I was like, "You want to stand and bang?" And then for whatever reason, I flipped him off. I don't know why I did that, but I was down. I was like, "We're gonna stand and bang," and then I didn't. I backed off and circled, and I'm like, my body is not doing anything that I want it to do.
Mm.
So it's frustrating, and it's also one of those reasons why like as much as it's disheartened me, it's also like it's never defeated me because I know what I went through in that fight, and I didn't get knocked out. I didn't get choked out. I didn't even get dominated. To this day, some people even argue I should have won the fight. I'm a big critic of myself, and if I don't perform well, I'm immediately like, I'm not going to make an argument for whether I should have won the fight or not, because if I should have won the fight, I would have fought better. Um, so yeah, that fight was really frustrating, but I knew the stakes. I knew what was at the stakes, and I knew I was getting cut. So I was just already ready to focus on my next fight. I was like texting promoters that day, like, "Yo, I need a fight," and they're like, "You're in the UFC," and I'm like, "Not for long."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine that feeling. I've never fought, but let alone, being that, sick and not feeling well. But then you end up going back to Cage Titans FC, capture lightweight gold there, and then let's go back to your last MMA bout this past July. Another very tough fight. You lost a close split decision. I rewatched it last night actually, and you see you're kind of pointing to the guy when they're making the decision. Was that like you knew you didn't think you won, or was that like you just kind of figured the judges would give it to him? It seemed like he had a lot of like they had like the F Joe Giannetti towels
Yeah,
and all that, and you
yeah,
got the booze. Was it kind of like a home crowd, or I mean, how did you feel? At the end of
yeah,
that.
yeah. So the crowd was pretty split. It's kind of hometown for both of us. Me and him have gone back and forth forever. Like I just said, when I perform poorly or don't perform to the best of my ability, I'm not gonna, even if I should have won 1,000%, I don't really sit here and go, "Well, I should have won. The judges screwed me," because I can't control what the judges are gonna think. I can only control what I do. So, looking back on it, and I haven't watched it yet, but it's funny. Like, my wins, I forget some of the shit I do in a fight. My losses, I remember every second of the fight. And thinking back on it, like maybe I should have won the fight, but I didn't perform great. So I'm never gonna, go online and be like, "Well, they screwed me because of this." Because if I had just done a little more, done a little better, then I would have won. And that was another case of kind of, I think it felt to me more like I lost the fight than he won the fight.
Mm.
Personally, now, do I think I should have won the fight? Yeah, but if I had performed better, I definitely would have won the fight. So It sucked, and that's why I kinda was just like, they're gonna give it to him. It's also one of those things where it's like, I go out there to fight, and I go out there to finish people, and I don't really and this is a flaw of mine, I don't really go out there to, like, sway the judge's opinion. He's one of those guys where, like, he throws a slapping leg kick, and him and his corner are like, "Oh, hey!" And then now
Yeah,
now you're the judge cage side going, "Oh, that must have been a good kick." And it
right.
wasn't. Like, my leg was pretty bruised up and it was tight, but it was like I was in the gym on Monday, I wasn't hurt. He had stitches in his face, stitches in his leg. So there's arguments to be made, and I'm frustrated at myself for it. But if I can run that back with him, I don't know. I don't think he'll ever take that fight again. But if we were to run that back, it wouldn't go anywhere near the same.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the commentary was a little biased. I noticed that too. I don't know that the judges can hear the commentators, but I didn't even think of that. The corner making a lot of commotion and stuff. Like he had a lot of leg kicks, but that first round you hit the super clean uppercut and just how would you describe like your style for nobody that's ever seen you fight? Like you're so smooth and fluid, the southpaw for the most part. Just describe your style for anybody that's never seen you.
The way I describe it to people is I'm like the poor man Stephen Thompson with some wrestling and jujitsu. I grew up wrestling in high school, and then right after high school, I got into jujitsu and then into MMA, and that's always kind of been my base. I really, really struggled with picking up striking when I started training. I just like
Wow.
footwork and like putting my hands together. It felt like a whole nother language. I just couldn't do it. And right
Mm,
before I went pro, I took a year where I did not spar at all. Alls I did was shadow box, drills, and bag work. And I watched hours and hours and hours of Stephen Thompson videos and breakdowns and fights and
mm.
kind of created my striking style. And it started to work. And that's just what I've stuck with and just adding on to it ever since. So yeah, poor man Stephen Thompson with some ground game.
No, I love that. That's crazy to say that you kind of struggled with their striking early on because that seems like predominantly your style, or at least you look super comfortable there. One of the combos, I forget if it was like the third or fourth round you landed on him was like the jab and then straight left and then the left high kick right over that. We've seen like Leon Edwards do
Yep.
that and Robert Whitaker. Is that like a favorite? I love that same side coming
Yeah,
over.
Robert Whitaker is another one of my favorite fighters. So like when I was on that kick of watching Stephen Thompson, and then I'd already seen the fight, but I forgot about it. And then watching Stephen Thompson knock out Whitaker when Whitaker was fighting at 170, I was like devastated. I was like, these are two of my favorite fighters. But yeah, I love both their styles. Whitaker's, and it's funny because Whitaker's one of those guys where you're like, he's gonna throw that head kick behind his rear hand, and he lands it every time.
Yeah, yeah, he's nasty. I love watching him too. It was so sad to see what Kamzat did to Dreykus and
Oh,
then what Kamzat did to him. But yeah, some more positive stuff though. But this past October, you get that Karate Combat debut, go in there, beautiful question mark kick. But how is that connection initially made? Is it like you have a manager hammering the phones, calling President Awesome? Is it you just reaching out to him? How's that connection first made?
so a buddy of mine, he's actually from Florida, Joe Party Penafiel. He
Mm,
came up and he's fought at Cage Titans a bunch. I've cornered him, and after my last MMA loss, I was kind of at a point where I was like, the UFC is not picking me up after a loss, so screw it. Like I can kind of go play around and do whatever I want. And
mm,
I knew he had fought for Karate Combat before, so I shot him a message and I was like, "Hey man, you got any connections, like the matchmaker or the owner, whoever, that I can hit up for Karate Combat?" And he was like, "Yep, here's my boy Leo. He's the matchmaker. Hit him up. We'll see what he can do." Next day, I shoot Leo a message and I'm like, "Hey man, you looking to make any fights at 55 for any upcoming cards?" And he was like, "Would you do 165?" I was like, "Cut 10 less pounds? Hell yeah." And
yeah,
then he was like, "All right, give me a day." And the next day he comes back. He's like, "Would you fight Brandon Jenkins?" And I was like, "What's the pay?" He gave me the pay. I was like, "All right, let's do it." Then I go to look up Brandon. I'd already seen Brandon Jenkins fight a bunch, and I go to look up more of his fights, and I see his Karate Combat fights, and then it says he's like the number 7 ranked welterweight, and I was like, shit, I just agreed to my debut against number 7. All right, we got to get to work. But yeah, the whole thing was awesome. Joe hooked it up, and Leo and everybody at Karate Combat was great.
yeah, yeah. I saw the clip where you. It's another interview where you learn that question mark kick off the UFC game. Is that's true?
That's 100% true. I used to play the UFC games religiously, especially when I first started training, and the question mark kick and many other things I couldn't figure out in training. So I would just play the game and be like, all right, how did they do it when I hit the button? And then
Mhm.
one day it just clicked while I was playing as Anthony Pettis, and I was like, holy shit, I can do that. And I just went to the gym and started spamming it on the heavy bag.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And then just your thoughts afterwards, emotions. You get that win, and then obviously it's like a bounce back for you having lost your last MMA fight. Just feelings afterwards.
It was great, and it's funny because I kind of bounce between Like, who cares what everybody thinks? Do this for you, do this for your people. And like, I got bullied as a kid, so like, let's be petty and remind everybody who we are, you know?
Mm,
And I know after that win, everybody that was here at home that was excited for my last loss was stomping their feet and throwing a tantrum like, damn, he won on one of the biggest platforms in the world. Screw him. So
mhm.
that obviously makes me feel good, even though I try not to let it get to me, but that felt good. And like I said, fighting number 7 at Karate Combat, my debut was awesome. And just having the people around me that it went according to our game plan. My coach Justin Burrell, he told me, he was like, "You're gonna stay long, and as soon as he starts throwing wild, start putting that head kick upstairs." And it's exactly what I did. The very first head kick I threw landed perfect and put him down.
Yeah, yeah, that was sick. He even like it was pretty much blocked, but it didn't really matter. And then you have the picture too of the crowd reaction
Yeah.
and the haters going nuts. But yeah, that was amazing. Do you want to get back in there? I know the goal for you is UFC, but karate combat wise, are you still trying to get in there as much as possible? I know it's tough because they have kind of limited events and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
I'm down for whatever. I'm kind of in this spot. I like the UFC is still my goal, or a step to my goal. I want to be one of the best in the UFC, but I'm down for whatever. And I even told them, I was like, if you can have me fighting in the pit and then I go do MMA and then I'll come back and I'll do the pit submission series and then I'll fight in the pit again and we just keep rotating, like that'd be a perfect dream for me. It's like I get to do karate combat, pit grappling, and then MMA in the cage. Like let's just keep it running. I want to stay active and keep competing. Um, I really don't care. And I'm at this point where it's like I've done pretty much everything locally in Plymouth. The only thing I'd really want to do is get my belt back, especially, against who I lost it to and how I lost
mm,
it. Um, and then other than that, it's like I just want to fight the best of the best and I want to prove that I belong. And, the next time that the UFC comes to Boston, I've missed about probably 4, maybe 5 events at this point. Um, I'm getting on that damn card. Like I'm fighting at the TD Garden, like it's happening, and I don't
yeah,
give a shit who says no.
yeah, even if it's in the parking lot or you're
Yeah, if it's
fighting
in the parking
somebody.
lot, if it's in the lobby, I don't care, but I'm fighting at the Garden.
Yeah, and then just back to the karate combat a little bit. I know your fight wasn't very long, but just the pit compared to a cage, how's that differ?
It was awesome. It was so
Yeah.
cool. Like the pit itself, the entrance, the way you have to drop in, the production, and then like what I was trying to explain to my friends and family is when you're watching it on YouTube or Twitter or whatever you're watching it on, and you hear like fighters enter the pit, like that's not a
Mhm.
broadcast thing. Like that comes on over the speakers in the
Oh man.
arena. So it was like I felt like it was the Mortal Kombat voice. It was like fight,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh, it's going down. And then as soon as we got all of our stuff out of the locker room, we went back into the crowd. We were watching the fights, and obviously my fight wasn't long enough. But one of the other fights, they were scrapping, and there was like 10 seconds left, and all of a sudden you hear over the speakers, 10 seconds left. And I was
Oh.
like, oh shit. And they just stepped in the middle and started banging. And I was like, that's what MMA needs. Like
Mm.
if you're in like TD Garden or Madison Square Garden and there's 10 seconds left and you hear it over the speakers as a fighter, that's gonna rile you up. Like you're gonna go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's way better than just like the click, like they do like the gavel
Yeah, the little
sound.
clap. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
enough. You hear like 10 seconds in that voice, you're like, oh, we got to get it on.
Yeah. They should almost do it in like the Max Holloway voice or like tamp it down
Yes.
and do like that. Yeah, and then Poeton's sisters on that card too. I saw the picture you were able to meet Poeton. What was that like?
That was crazy, man. And I've met a lot of fighters at this point. He is probably the biggest man I've ever met. Like I met Robert Whitaker at UFC Brooklyn forever ago, and we're like the same exact height. So I was like, oh wow, like either I'm a lot bigger than I thought, or he's a lot smaller than I thought.
Right.
DC's big, but he's shorter than me. Cain Velasquez is pretty big too.
Yeah.
But then like meeting Poeton, I felt like a little kid. I was like, "Nice to meet you, sir." Like it was crazy. His hand like completely wrapped around mine. I was just like, "This is nuts." And he doesn't drink anymore. He's just at the after party. He's just vibing and having a good time. He was really cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Now I want to get into some of your YouTube stuff. I know you stream and all that. What first got you into doing that?
Um, I've been a gamer my whole life. I've always played video games. Starting out with Mario Brothers on my Game Boy Color and Zelda on the Nintendo 64, and then probably around 2017, 2018, Twitch kind of started blowing up. I was watching Nick Merck stream Fortnite and all that. And, I saw that like some people were like making some money from it. And I was just like, huh, that's like a crazy concept that like people just like watch you play video games. And my buddy that I was living with at the time, he was like, well, imagine when the boys come over and you guys kind of like take turns playing Fortnite. Like everybody's watching you play. It's the
Mm,
same thing. They're just doing it from home. And then one of my other friends was like, "Dude, you're gonna play video games no matter what. Throw on a camera and you make a couple bucks. You
right.
have some people watching. Screw it." So I started doing it, and I was like inconsistent with it, like on and off for a few years. And then like during COVID, I kind of was there's nothing else to do, so I was just like training in my garage, and then I kind of built up my stream setup. And I was like, all right, let's get back to it. Let's get a little community going. And we built a pretty good community. We had sub Sundays going. Everybody that was subscribed to the channel could jump in for Fortnite or Warzone or whatever.
Mm,
And it's been pretty cool. I make some money from it, nothing crazy, but sometimes I make a good chunk. And if I have a really good month, I'll try and do like a little giveaway to give back, whether it's fight gloves or whatever.
mm,
Um, but it's been cool. It's just another way for fans to kind of interact with me. And it's also like, it's live, so I'm just chilling, playing video games with the boys. And it's like, if you have a question, like, you don't have to be like, yo, can we do an interview? It's like, you can just jump in the stream and be like, yo, when's your next
mm.
fight? Or like, do you have an opponent? So it's
Right.
cool for fans. It's cool for me. Um, and I'm pretty competitive, so even though I'm not the greatest at competitive video games, like I myself am competitive, so sometimes I crash out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's understandable. But as a content creator myself, I really only use like YouTube for the most part. So just from your perspective, like between Twitch and Kick, like what do you like more? What do you find like kind of what's the difference for you there?
I like the interface and what Twitch has going on. I like that, they have this new thing where you can reformat your clips to like a TikTok or Instagram format instead of the
Mm,
widescreen right from Twitch's website. I like Kick because as soon as you monetize your channel, they give you a bigger split of monthly subscriptions. So like Twitch
oh,
is like, I think it's 40/60 now or 50/50, and then Kick is 95/5. So it's like, if you can monetize that, you're making a lot more.
mm,
Um, I'm trying this year. I made a promise to myself I'd be more active on YouTube and put a lot more out there because I feel like YouTube is one of those things that it builds you a lot better because your content doesn't go away. It's not like a temporary like live stream where it's like
mm,
people will always be looking for something. So if you're answering a question on YouTube, 10 years from now somebody could type in like how do I throw a question mark kick, and then your
yeah.
video pops up and people are still watching it. And then honestly I kind of just use the other social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, to funnel people to YouTube, Twitch, or Kick. I feel like those are good segues.
Yeah, yeah, I've noticed, it's like a different lane than kinda what I do, but, like, the IRL Twitch streamers will,
Yep,
like, go out and do whatever they do and then just put their clips on YouTube too, so there's all different types of ways to do it, but, the next thing I wanna get into is there's no UFC fights this weekend, but next weekend, Saturday, February 1st, that, Saudi card is pretty stacked, we don't have to go through the whole thing, obviously, but if we just go through some of these, do some predictions,
for sure.
fight I want to start with, the third to last fight is let's see, Sergey Sergey Pavlovich versus Rosenstruck. Heavyweights, hard to predict. Both
Yep.
can knock each other out. How do you see that going?
I like Rosenstruck, but I feel like he hasn't really improved lately. Like I feel like
Hmm.
every fight I watch is the same, and that seems to just be the deciding factor at heavyweight. Like you don't have to improve that much to become a
Right.
top tier heavyweight because I feel like a lot of those guys know any punch can knock you out, so they're just banking on one of them, putting you to sleep. I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna go with Sergey in that fight.
Okay. Yeah, that's like we said. Heavyweights are so tough. It can go. I never bet on heavyweights unless it's
Never, never.
John Jones, maybe, but that's about
Yeah,
it. And then that's co-main is Shara Bullet versus MVP making his middleweight debut. That's exciting.
that's gonna be a crazy fight.
Yeah.
If that fight stays on the feet, I want to say MVP.
Mm,
I love his style. I know he's getting older, but it's just I think that's a style that's really hard to compete with pure striking.
yeah.
And I haven't really seen the bullet, be that grappling heavy. Obviously, I'm sure he can. Where he's from, I'm sure he's a very good grappler and wrestler.
Right.
But yeah, no, I'd probably go with MVP on that one.
Yeah, yeah, we saw like MVP come in and kind of bully Kevin Holland in his debut, and then Ian Gary used that good grappling offense to his advantage. But yeah, I don't see Shura trying to take him down. So you're probably right. MVP, I could see getting that decision in the main event. First time seeing Adesanya on a fight night since 2019. That's insane.
Crazy.
He takes on Nazardine Imavov. What do you see? What do you see there?
Izzy should win. I like his opponent. I don't even know how to say his name, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
say his opponent.
I
Um,
probably butchered it, so it's okay.
but yeah, no, Izzy should win that. I really do hope, because MMA fans are so fickle. So everybody's on the Izzy's on the way out train. I really don't think so. I mean, you look at these guys and who they're losing to, it's like they're losing to the 1% of the 1%. So,
Yeah,
losing to that guy doesn't mean you're going to lose to a guy that's, top 15. Um,
right.
yeah, so I think Izzy, if he still is, maybe not in his prime, but not on the decline as much as people say, I think he gets the job done. I think I'm more interested to see if he comes out there foot on the gas trying to put him away, or if it's kind of like what people critique him for, like the stick and move, low calf kick, leg kicks, and eke out a decision. I thought he looked great against Duplessis until he
Yeah,
got caught and taken down. He looked great. And, especially in hindsight, that's not Izzy. That's Duplessis. Like he looks
right,
so horrible and wins. Like the shot that he rocked Izzy with makes no sense. Izzy
right.
fights guys like Poatan, he fights all these phenomenal strikers and he doesn't get caught. And then he gets caught by like a windmill punch. I don't think it's lacking on Izzy's part. I think it's just Duplessis finding a way to win.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you remember Keith Jardine, but he was one of those super herky jerky styles, just
Yep.
weird, awkward to pinpoint. But how do you see? There's a little bit away, but Dreykus and Strickland, that rematch is coming up. That's so hard to predict too.
I think that's a coin flip. I
Yeah.
said this on a post the other day. Actually, I think I think Duplessis is going to win, which is exactly why he's going to lose. Because I always think he's
Mm.
going to lose, and he wins. So I'm finally I gave up. Rooting against him. I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
He's going to win, which means I'll probably be wrong, and Strickland will finally get a finish after a while.
Yeah. Either, no matter who wins, Dreykus or Strickland, you think Kamzat kind of beats either one of those, or?
Yeah, man. Like I think if Duplessis wins, I would bet my soul on Hamzat beating him.
Mm.
But then it's like it's Duplessis, so who knows? Like
Yeah.
Hamzat and Duplessis is a close fight, and not for any reason that it should be. It's only
Right.
a close fight because Duplessis finds a way to win
Mm.
always.
Yeah, yeah, he's just a strange guy. I feel like he gets kind of like unnecessary hate. People are like he's unlikable, but I think it's that weird style. It's like you said, like you bet against him and then he'll pull something like that out. But yeah, it's crazy. But we touched on it a little bit. I know the goal is get back into the UFC, become great, top ranked in there. Just it's a loaded question, but like how do you kind of get back in there? It's a tough spot because it's like they obviously know you exist, so you don't want to like bug them too much. How do you just kind of go about that? Is it just a waiting game or?
Honestly, I think for me, it's to keep improving and kind of just it's hard. Like right now, I've been kind of telling myself it's living the life that I need to live, even if it costs other things. So like for me, it's
Mm,
like I've missed plenty of training to go to work. I still got bills to pay outside of this fighting stuff, and that's why I
mm,
always preach like, when I'm fighting locally, like buy tickets from me or your favorite fighter, buy T-shirts, and if you don't have the money to buy any of that or buy tickets, just like, share, and comment posts. Stuff like that pushes me and other fighters up on the algorithm, which could make a potential sponsor that wouldn't see us before see us now,
mm,
or even just make the post get enough views and shares and comments that it ends up monetizing, and then we get a couple bucks.
yeah,
Um, so like for me, it's just I've sacrificed so much for this sport, and it kind of gets to the point where you're like, do I have anything left to give, or like am I willing to give anymore? And I feel like for a little bit I was kind of just like, I'm going to train how I train and whatever happens happens, because I was so broke and I was past due on stuff and missing out on bills that I was just like, I got to go to work. I got to miss out on training. My last few fights I've missed out on a lot of training because I had to work.
yeah.
And now I'm kind of just at this point where it's like I'm missing out on work so I can go train, and in my personal life it sucks, but it's like it's going to pay off. It has to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think a lot of people realize, like, we got the opportunity to speak with Miranda Maverick, and she has a full-time job working for, like, the Hershey Company. I don't think
It's a
people
sick
realize
job.
that, like, yeah, I don't think people realize that, like, fighting isn't, like, the end all. It doesn't cover everything, even for that UFC. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize that, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
100%. It's tough because it's also like people are like, oh, well, you get, for UFC fighters, say you get 15 and 15,000. It's like,
Right.
well, I get 15,000 to make weight. The rest isn't guaranteed. Then I got to
Hmm.
pay coaches. Then I got to pay taxes. Then I got to, all that stuff, and it adds up freaking quick.
Yeah. What are you kind of looking to do or accomplish kind of in the meantime?
Yeah, I've been this week specifically, I've kind of been shopping around. I hit up a couple promotions and I've been talking with them. I hit up Karate Combat again, and I just want to be super active this year. And it's looking like I'll be back to fighting probably the end of February, maybe the end of March. I'd like the end of February, the sooner the better.
Hmm.
But prior to Tough, I was fighting like 4 or 5 times a year, and I haven't really been able to since, and it drives me nuts. I like being active. I like being in shape, being in camp. I like training hard and just fighting. Um, and there's rumors of UFC Boston coming around sooner rather than later, so it's like I'm really just trying to stay active and make a statement.
Yeah, and I know it's a few months away, but you got a big birthday coming up, big 3-0. Any plans, or you're not even thinking about that yet?
So as of now, it's like, and this is the toughest like thing about fight life. As of now, what I really want to do, me and my wife were talking about, I want to go to UFC International Fight Week,
Mm,
and I want to do all the the little pop-up events they have, but then instead of like paying thousands of dollars to go watch the fights, just go to they have like the rooftop swim up pools with the
yeah,
swim up bars and all the giant screens. I just want to go hang out there with my buddies, watch some fights. So it's like you get the fight week experience without spending the fight week money.
yeah,
um but life's crazy, man. It's hard for me to book vacations and stuff. Well, one, money wise, and two, it's like you book a vacation and then a month later you have a fight on that date, and it's like, oh, there goes that vacation. So
yeah.
it's kind of one of those things where it's like, obviously we got to wait to see when fight week gets announced, and then book it as close as possible, just so I don't get any fights on that week.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then just before I get you out of here, I'm sure anybody watching this already knows, how to find you, but you have a lot of things, Twitch, Kick, everything. Just plug all your socials. Where can we find you?
You can find me absolutely everywhere. If there's a social media platform you're on, I'm probably on it. It's at Giannetti MMA. Two N's and two T's messes everybody up. But yeah, you can find me everywhere. Just follow, subscribe, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. Look forward to your journey, see where it goes for you, and yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.